Alright, and we are live. Welcome back, everyone, to the third episode of the Avatar The Last Airbender podcast, where myself, Zion, and my friend over here, Jax, we are reviewing basically the first season, or book one, of Avatar The Last Airbender. So we have reviewed episode 1 till episode 10 up to this point. For this episode of the podcast, we will be going through episodes 11 to 15. This will basically be the second last podcast, or the penultimate podcast. It's a reference there from last week, if you remember. Yes. So this will be the second last podcast for this particular season. And yeah, before I move on, Jax, anything like to add on?
Hello. I guess I didn't say it at the start, so I guess I'll say it now. Hello, and glad to be back. Good to be back. Interesting set of episodes, and I say let's just jump right into it.
Okay, cool. All right. I have the background music going on in the back, but I just hope it's not too loud. If it is, anyone in chat, just let me know. Thanks. Okay. So, as usual, we'll be going through the different. So basically, how the podcast works normally is we'll be going through the plot of the 5 episodes that we have just watched, review it basically, and then after that we'll go through the likes and the dislikes that we have. We'll go through the characters that we have seen through these 5 episodes, and then after that we'll go through the likes and the dislikes that we had for these particular episodes, followed by anything interesting that we found in the cinematics of these episodes, anything different, anything new. And finally, of course, we will come up to the ranking section, which is the last section, where we will rank our top characters, basically, for our favorite characters from those 5 episodes. Hi, Mina, welcome. Alright, so let's go on right ahead with the plot. So I shall kick us off first with the plot review for episode number 11. And this episode is called The Great Divide. So if you are an Avatar The Last Airbender fan, I'm pretty sure you would have heard of this episode before. Mainly because it's actually the episode that has been ranked as the worst episode in the entire series by many fans. And the reason behind it is actually because of how inconsequential the episode is. But you know what? We are going into this with an open mind anyway, so let's just see how what this episode is about. So it starts off with Katara and Sokka fighting about how they're going to set up their tent. Katara, mainly, she wants to put up the particular shade in order to protect them from rain, but Sokka, looking around, says it's not going to rain, you're going to waste your time putting it up. So Aang comes in and manages to defuse the situation, and he gets quite proud there. It's like, I'm the Avatar anyways, this is what I'm meant to do. I'm meant to help out. So they carry on their journey, and they reach this place called the Great Divide. So what this is actually, it's basically the Grand Canyon, but in the Avatar universe. It's a huge canyon that they intend to just fly over across. But while they were there, they met a refugee who's actually from a tribe called the Ganjin tribe. So this refugee, he's as soon as he came in, he thought that they were trying to get hold of the canyon guide, whose job is actually to take people safely through the canyon. And he was there as a representative from his tribe, the Ganjin tribe, who happened to be a very sort of pompous and snobbish kind of tribe, essentially. And he came there early in order to save a spot with the canyon guide to take them across the canyon, in order for them to travel to the great Earth Kingdom city that we've actually heard about quite a bit so far, called Ba Sing Se. At that moment, another tribe called the Zhang tribe arrives, and this tribe, it seems to be like the polar opposite of the other tribe that we saw, the Genjin tribe, where these guys are more rough and more barbaric in a sense. And we see that there's actually a feud that's ongoing between both of these tribes. So Aang, again being the Avatar, he decides to reason with them, and they decide that they will be traveling together. Aang, Katara, and Sokka will be traveling together with them through the canyon on foot. So the guide informs them before they go in that they are not allowed to bring any sort of food into the canyon because it attracts predators. So they start eating up what food they have and start throwing away whatever food that's balanced. And they start their journey, and almost immediately they are attacked by a canyon crawler. It's basically this huge spider kind of. It's sort of like an insectoid kind of creature that attacks them. But Aang and the team, they manage to fight it off. But in the process, the guide gets injured and he actually hurts his arm, and that causes him to be unable to earthbend. And due to this, they end up getting stuck in the canyon. Meanwhile, both the tribes, they start bickering even more. And Aang, he decides to split up the Ganjin and the Zhangs so that they will travel separately through the canyon. And Katara will follow the Genjin, and Sokka will follow the Zhang tribe. So Katara, while she is with the Genjin tribe, she realizes that her way of thinking is very similar to the tribe. And also Sokka, while he's with the Zhang tribe, he realizes that he's also quite similar to the Zhang tribe themselves. And they find out that both the tribes have in fact smuggled food into the canyon, even though the guide warned them not to. And furthermore, they also find out about the story between what caused the feud between both the tribes. So Katara, she learns about the story of the feud, and this story is basically a long time ago. The leader of the Genjin tribe, called Jin Wei, he was conducting an ancient redemption ritual, which was to transport a sacred orb from the eastern gate to the western gate. However, as he was reaching the western gate, he was attacked by Wei Jin, a member of the Zhang tribe, who stole the orb. Sokka, on the other hand, he learns about the story from the Zhang's perspective, the Zhang tribe, where he found out that Wei Jin found the injured Jin Wei and was requested by him to take the orb back to his village. So Wei Jin, he decided to help out Jin Wei to do this, and he actually successfully took the orb back to the Genjin village, but he was instead arrested and put into jail for 20 years. So while this is happening, Aang, he's starting to worry about how they're going to get out of the canyon now, essentially without an earthbender with them. So the next day, Aang, he learns about the stories from both Sokka and Katara, but as they progress, they are almost reaching the end of the canyon. He informs both the tribes that he wants them to work together in order to figure out how to get out of the canyon. But of course, these are feuding tribes. They end up fighting each other instead. Aang, he uses his earthbending to break up the fight, and that actually ends up revealing the fact that both the tribes had brought a lot of food into the canyon. And when the food was revealed, it was exposed, this attracted the canyon crawlers to come in and attack more of these insectoid creatures that came in. So the group, they tried to fight as well as they could against these canyon crawlers, but there were just too many of them. And Aang, he comes up with a plan to use the food to their advantage. And he actually, what he informed the rest of them to do was to use the bags that had the food inside them to cover the mouth of these canyon crawlers and use it as like a leash to ride up the wall out of the canyon, basically. And the Genjins and the Zhangs, they did this successfully, but they were still feuding with each other. They were still fighting with each other. And Aang, suddenly as he was listening to them bickering, he suddenly informs them that, oh wait, I knew Jing Wei and Wei Jin. He actually says that, because he is 100 over years old, that he knew both of them, and they were actually 8-year-old brothers. And this story was a misconception, basically, between both the tribes. They were actually playing a game where they needed to bring a ball from one end of the field to the other end of the field. And yeah, due to this, that whole 20 years in prison thing, it was actually just a 2-minute timeout for the 8-year-old kid. So basically, Aang diffuses the situation, and the tribes realize that they should forget the past and work together for their own future and for their upcoming journey to Ba Sing Se. In the end, everyone's happy. They've gone their separate ways, and Aang actually reveals to Katara and Sokka that he actually made up the entire story. It wasn't true, basically. And yep, that's how that episode ends. And so I will hand over to Jax for the next episode.
Yeah. So episode 12 is called The Storm. So at the start of this episode, we see Aang flying in the air with Sokka and Katara, and everything seems kind of happy. And then suddenly the scene kind of changes and they disappear. And as Aang's looking around for them, there's these storm clouds that sort of come into the sky, and they threaten to kind of swallow Aang and Appa. And just before the storm clouds, sort of cover him, Monk Gyatso, which is Aang's old mentor, suddenly appears before Aang and just asks him, "Why did you disappear?" before he vanishes. And then suddenly Aang gets, thrown around by the storm and he gets thrown down towards the ocean with Appa and they crash into the water. And as he crashes into the water, there's a lot of voices that are saying, "We need you, Aang, we need you." And suddenly you see a flash of Fire Lord Ozai's silhouette like lightning, and Aang wakes up, and it turns out to actually be a nightmare this entire time. And Katara and Sokka are a little bit concerned. Well, Sokka not so much, but Katara's a little bit concerned. But Aang hides what happened from the others. Eventually, the next morning, the group heads to an island to find some supplies and food. And Sokka is actually hired to assist the fishermen because the group didn't have any money. And so, with a little bit of ribbing from Katara, Sokka eventually just walks up to this fisherman and just says, "Hey, let me work for you." And so the fisherman hires him, and the fisherman actually recognizes Aang, and he sees Aang, and he angrily calls him the avatar who turned his back on the world. And then he sort of gets off on the boat and then sails off with Sokka. So actually, before they sail off, this entire time there is actual storm clouds that are threatening to come in, like huge, huge storm clouds. But the fisherman wanted to go out anyway because he thought there wouldn't be any problem. So anyway, after the fisherman kind of shouts at Aang like that, Aang kind of feels very guilty, and so he flies away, and then he flies away using his glider, and then Katara ends up taking Appa and chases him, and eventually finds him in this little cave. And so Katara, was trying to defend him from the fisherman, and so she was trying to get him to be like, hey, like, ignore that fisherman guy. He was just kind of being a meanie, you know what I mean? But then Aang tells her, and he reveals, more of his story, that actually he did run away from home, and that he did turn his back on the world because the monks at the Southern Air Temple wanted to separate him from Gyatso to begin his avatar training. And so it's at this point that we get a little bit more of an insight into his backstory. So I think I'll probably go into what his backstory was first.
Yeah, sure.
So essentially, Aang's backstory that they show, right? They essentially show him at the Southern Air Temple, having his fun and playing around. And then eventually he was telling the story about the day that he actually, was chosen to be the Avatar. And so the monks at the temple show him the 4 toys that he picked as a baby, which proved to them that he was the Avatar because those 4 toys are the exact same 4 toys that have been chosen by every single Avatar before him. So it's kind of like the Avatar spirit within him like recognizes those toys, so they know that he's the Avatar. And so after that, they wanted to begin his Avatar training. And when he started his Avatar training, all of a sudden this kind of alienated him a little bit from the other children that he used to play with, because now all of a sudden nobody wanted to play games with him because he was the Avatar, so he was stronger than them and more powerful than them. And so they felt like it was unfair, so he didn't have like many friends anymore. And so the only person he could rely on was Monk Gyatso. So Monk Gyatso was in charge of all of his training and everything, but he used to spend time with Aang, and they used to play the Pai Sho game that Uncle Iroh is so fond of. And he was basically training Aang, and then the monks noticed that they wanted Aang to be training more and more and harder because they knew that something bad was coming, which was, of course, as we know now, the 100-Year War. They could sense that something bad was going to happen, so they wanted Aang to be prepared. But Monk Gyatso wanted to give Aang the chance to grow up like a normal boy and still at the same time do his training. So he wanted a balance. So anyway, in order to speed up Aang's training, the monks then ruled to Monk Gyatso that he would have to be separated from Aang in order for them properly train Aang to be prepared for whatever was coming. However, after hearing this, Aang essentially becomes super distraught, and he leaves a letter from Monk Gyatso. He takes Appa and he flies off to nowhere. And then along the way, while he was flying, he got caught in a storm, And just like we saw at the start of the episode, he gets thrown down into the water, and in order to save himself, his body goes into the avatar state, and he essentially forms a ball of air around himself. And then that air, essentially, he also manages to freeze it into an ice ball, which locks him and Appa in there together. That's basically how he got stuck there for 112 years until Korra found him. At the same time,
Katara.
there's also a feud that was going on Zuko's ship. Um, Sorry?
Oh no, you said Korra found him. Katara found him.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Katara. Sorry, getting my wires crossed here. Um, so yeah. At the same time, on Zuko's ship, Zuko gets into a bit of a fight with one of his crew members because he isn't showing the crew member a lot of respect, and the crew member kind of gets fed up with him and just kind of saying, we're trying to go and find this avatar for you, and we're working for you. And you have no respect for us, and they almost break into a fight, but Uncle Iroh kind of calms them down. And later on, Uncle Iroh finds the crew kind of talking smack about Zuko down in the hull of the ship. And so, he goes down there to talk to them. And, they're kind of afraid at first, but, Iroh just tells them, no, don't worry. I understand, where you guys are coming from, but you also got to understand where Zuko is coming from. And so Iroh goes into the story of what actually happened to Zuko and how he got the scar on his face. So Iroh told the story of how Zuko was a very zealous young man, and he really wanted to, learn about taking control of, his country and protecting his father's kingdom, and he really wanted to be a good successor, and he wanted to be a good son. And so as a part of that, he wanted to get into this war meeting, where all the generals gather together and discuss strategy with Fire Lord Ozai. However, what happens instead is, he gets blocked by the guards and not allowed to go into the room to discuss with the other generals. And so Uncle Iroh finds him, and Iroh tries to tell him, like, oh, the meeting's boring. You don't want to come in. But then, Zuko kind of convinces him, says, please let me in. I really just want to learn something. And so Iroh tells him from the start, he says, okay, as long as you promise not to say anything, because some of the generals in there, they're a little bit nitpicky about, youngsters kind of piping up and, shutting them down or anything like that. So Zuko promises, he said, yeah, I'm not going to say anything, which is a lie. So then Iroh basically not sneaks, but he brings Zuko in, sits him down in front of all the other generals, and they're discussing a war plan. And so one of the generals, the plan that he was suggesting was to send a battalion of men forward in this assault against a bunch of Earth Kingdom soldiers. And the other general questioned him, and he said, the soldiers at this checkpoint, they're quite good soldiers, but the battalion that you want to send, these guys are all new recruits, they're not experienced at all. And so the first general says, yeah, of course, we're sending them in because they're fresh meat, you know what I mean? We send them in, the other soldiers, they get tired, they basically let their guard down a little bit because they're going to be able to defeat those guys really easily. And then they send the good guys, the really good, well-trained soldiers in later. So basically using that battalion as bait in order to win that battle. And so the moment Zuko hears this, he jumps up and he's very upset. And he's just like, how can you do that? They're our men. You can't be sacrificing our men just for the sake of your plan. And, as Iroh told the crew members on the ship that, technically Zuko was right, but it wasn't his place to speak, essentially, within that room. And what ends up happening is Fire Lord Ozai becomes offended, and he feels like he's been disrespected within his own war room. Because it was his meeting, essentially, and his son sort of stood up and spoke out against his other generals. And so Fire Lord Ozai himself calls for an Agni Kai, which, if you recognize from the previous episodes, is a duel. He called for an Agni Kai with his own son. And so, obviously, Zuko, upon realizing that he has to fight his own father, he almost immediately gives in. And, he kneels down and he falls before his father's feet. And he keeps saying, I'm sorry, I'll be a good son. I won't say anything else. I just wanted to learn. I was just trying to voice an opinion, but I won't do it again. And the father just wouldn't let him have it. And eventually he said that you're going to have to learn respect the hard way, right? Either by yourself or through suffering. And it was his own father that gave Zuko his very characteristic scar on his left eye, the flame-shaped scar. And actually also in that small scene, you actually get introduced to a character we haven't met yet, which is Azula. What's his Zuko's sister, but we haven't actually met her yet. But yeah, Iroh was talking about how we couldn't bear to see it. So those are the backstories of both Aang and Zuko. And so after this, Zuko was banished for showing weakness and refusing to fight Ozai, and essentially he was sent to capture the Avatar as his only way of regaining his honor. Which is why Zuko keeps talking about honor and keeps talking about how important it is to catch the Avatar. So finally, the storm that was coming in hits, and Sokka and the fishermen and Zuko and Uncle Iroh essentially put in trouble because both their boats are at sea. And it turns out it wasn't just any storm, it was a huge, massive typhoon that's causing huge waves and basically threatening to crash both boats. Upon getting a call for help from the fisherman's wife, Aang and Katara basically jump on Appa and they rush in to save Sokka and the fishermen. And in the meantime, Zuko has to take charge on his boat, and he ends up actually saving one of his own men from dying during the storm. And he gets all of his crewmates to hold together and try and move towards the eye of the storm under guidance from Uncle Iroh. And during this time, he actually sees Aang on Appa, and he sees him, but he chooses not to go after Aang. He just decides, okay, you know what? Like, I just have to get this boat to safety first, and then I think about the Avatar. After Aang manages to save Sokka and the fishermen, they actually end up getting forced into the water again by the storm, and it's basically like a mirror of the events that led him to being trapped in the iceberg. But this time, he goes into his Avatar state, and he's actually able to escape with the fishermen and with Katara and Sokka. Also, one of the interesting things that happened in this scene is the first time we see that firebenders, really experienced firebenders clearly, like Iroh, is actually able to use firebending to redirect lightning away from the ship. And yeah, that's essentially the end of episode 12, The Storm. Back to you, Zion.
Alright. So, next episode, episode 13, called The Blue Spirit. So, this episode starts off with Commander Zhao. He's at this sort of Fire Nation fortress, essentially, with the colonel of the fortress, and they are watching the Yu Yang archers, a specific troop of archers who are incredibly... Basically, they are really skilled and powerful archers. And Zhao, he informs the colonel that he wants to use them in order for his quest to capture the Avatar. The colonel rejects him at first because he says that he wants to use the archers for his own defense. But at that exact moment, a messenger comes in with the message saying that Zhao has actually just been promoted to admiral, which essentially puts him up higher than the colonel's position. And he basically takes over the fortress as his own. And while this is happening, we see that on the roof of the location where they were talking, there's this mysterious person with this creepy looking blue mask that was basically snuck up on the roof and was eavesdropping on them. So back to the gang. The storm basically had caused both Sokka and Katara to fall sick. So Aang, he manages to find a map that indicates that there's a herbalist that lives at a mountain nearby. So he wants to go and meet this herbalist to get some medicine for his friends. On the way there, he's spotted by the Yu Yang archers who have already been sent out by Zhao. So he meets the herbalist who, after a little bit of a kerfuffle, informs him that in order for him to heal his friends, he needs to get some frozen frogs from a river nearby, and Sokka and Katara need to suck on these frogs. This is because the frogs release some sort of toxin that helps to heal people while they're frozen. So he makes his way to this riverbed and he starts collecting these frozen frogs. But at that exact moment, he gets attacked and captured by the Yu Yang archers, and he's taken to Admiral Zhao's complex. So also during the same time, Zuko's ship is basically stopped by one of Admiral Zhao's ships, and they are preventing Zuko from leaving this area that they are in right now. And Zuko, he starts getting worried that with Zhao's resources, the fact that he's an admiral now, Zuko will fail in his quest to capture the Avatar before him. So going back to Aang, so he has already been captured by Zhao, and hi Kinkler, thanks for the follow. So Aang, he's been captured by Zhao, and Zhao starts taunting him about, the fact that he's the last airbender, the only airbender that is left in this entire world. But he did inform Aang that he won't be killing him. This is mainly because of the fact that if he does kill the Avatar will simply be reborn again in a different in a different person somewhere around the world. So Zhao then he goes on to announce to his troops that they are victorious with the Avatar's capture now, and that they will use Sozin's comet to attack and destroy Ba Sing Se. So we can see that actually this was the first indication of what essentially the plan of the Fire Nation was, in order to use the forthcoming comet that we've talked about previously in the 2 episodes about the Spirit World and Roku. At the same time, the person in the blue mask actually sneaks into the fort, and it seems like he's going after Aang. So Aang's frozen frogs, the fact that they were frozen and now he's in this hot environment in this fortress, starts thawing, and they start escaping from Aang and from the room that he's been kept in. And this distracts the guards who were actually protecting the room, and the guy in the blue mask, he takes advantage of this, and the guards get defeated by this intruder. So essentially, we know now that this is basically the blue spirit, hence the title of the episode. So he doesn't talk or anything, or it seems like he doesn't use any sort of bending powers. He just uses these double swords, and he manages to free Aang from his chains. So both of them, they seem to be working together, and they decide to sneak away. But of course, eventually they get spotted by Zhao after he finds out that the Avatar had escaped. Aang and the Blue Spirit, they start working together to fight their way out. And you know what? They actually almost did. They were already almost out of the complex, but in the end, their plan was foiled by Zhao and his troops. And the Blue Spirit, it suddenly threatens to kill Aang. So Zhao, knowing that he's been cornered in this case, he doesn't want to risk losing the Avatar and having the Avatar reborn somewhere else again, decides to let them go. But of course, there's a reason for that. He decides to use the Yu Yang archers again to knock out the Blue Spirit with a powerful arrow straight into his mask. And the Blue Spirit gets knocked out, and Aang turns around and realizes that the mask is loose, and he removes the mask and realizes it's actually Zuko who's the Blue Spirit. So Aang, he knows that the troops are coming after him. He figures he wants to run away, but he decided to actually save Zuko as well, and both of them managed to escape. Zuko wakes up after a while, and Aang sort of reminisces about his time back over 100 years ago when he was in the Fire Nation with his friend called Kuzon. And he just asks Zuko randomly if he thinks that they could have been friends too. Zuko, in a moment of sort of uncertainty, suddenly decides to attack Aang, and Aang just jumps off and runs away. He goes back to the riverbed and collects the frogs, and he manages to get Korra. Now I'm saying Korra. He manages to get Katara and Sokka back to normal. And that's the end of that episode.
And then we come to episode 14. So episode 14 is the fortune teller. So in this episode, Katara, Aang, and Sokka basically come across a village, and the entire village relies on the predictions of its famous fortune teller, Aunt Wu. So like on the way to the village, they actually pass by this guy who's just calmly like dodging this platypus bear,
Yep.
who's like threatening to kill him, but he's just jumping left and right. He doesn't care about what's going on. And Aang, Katara, and Sokka, they're going crazy. They're trying to tell him like get away from him. And finally, Appa comes in and scares away the platypus bear, and it leaves an egg. That was hard to watch, but yeah. And so that guy ends up telling them that like, oh, I wasn't worried at all because Aunt Wu said I was going to have a safe journey, and as you can see, I'm still alive. You know what I mean? So Sokka is, of course, he's skeptical, and he doesn't want to believe anything this Aunt Wu says, and he keeps trying to like disprove all of her predictions, with humorous results. Katara, on the other hand, is like obsessed with Aunt Wu, and she keeps returning to Aunt Wu over the course of the episode because she wants more and more predictions on her love life, which is something that Sokka predicts at the start of the episode. Aang, who happened to overhear a part of Aunt Wu's prediction of Katara's love life, he's beginning to start developing feelings for Katara, so he attempts to sort of win her attention throughout the episode, with not a lot of success. Katara is just kind of in her own world at this point, thinking about, her love life. And then eventually he decides that he wants to get this panda lily flower from the lip of a nearby volcano. And this is the volcano which was predicted by Aunt Wu to not erupt that year. So it's like every single year they ask Aunt Wu, is the volcano going to erupt? And she says no, and they go yay, and they just live another year. And so Aunt Wu said the same thing this year. She said, the volcano is not going to erupt, and it's not going to destroy the town, and blah 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 blah. And so Aang goes up to the lip of the volcano to get this panda lily flower, and he sees that the volcano is very clearly on the verge of erupting because there's so much lava and it's almost near the edge of the volcano. And so quickly they run back and they try warning the entire village, but nobody is really kind of giving in. And then somehow or the other they eventually get all of the villagers to firstly help with some countermeasures to make sure that the lava doesn't overrun the village, and they also get everybody to evacuate the place just in case anything goes wrong. Finally, it's basically only Katara, Aang, and Sokka who are left behind in the village. So Katara and Aang use water bending to manipulate the clouds as a warning to the villagers and Aunt Wu to evacuate the village before the volcano erupts. And finally, when the volcano does erupt, they created all of these little trenches and channels so that the lava could flow in there. It's a bit of a drain. But suddenly something goes wrong and there's more lava than they expected, and it's about to overflow and just absolutely smash the town and just burn it to a crisp. But then as the lava comes towards the town, Aang pulls out some masterclass airbending and performs this extremely strong move to essentially cool down the lava into rock using his airbending breath. And what happens is this entirely huge wall of volcanic rock essentially forms, almost about to crash into the village, and then it just kind of solidifies. And it was at this moment that, Sokka just kind of stares at Aang in disbelief and is just kind of like, whoa, this kid is a powerful bender. And so this comment catches Katara by surprise, because earlier Aunt Wu predicted that she would marry a powerful bender. And so she starts thinking about that. And then eventually, as the trio is departing the village, Aunt Wu comes back and she talks to Aang, and she just reminds him that just as he reshaped the clouds, he also has the power to shape his own destiny. And then with that, the group leaves and continues on their journey into episode 15.
Yep. Let's switch this over. Alright. So, episode 15. The name of the episode is Bato of the Water Tribe. So the group, they continue on their journey and they come across this Water Tribe weapon in the middle of the forest, and they realize that there had been a fight between some Water Tribe people and the Fire Nation soldiers. So Sokka, he basically follows the trail of this fight, and eventually it leads them to discover a Water Tribe boat that has been basically it was beached on the shoreline. And at that they decide to just camp out around that boat area. And at night, Sokka, he recalls the moment of his father leaving the tribe, his father Hakoda leaving the tribe to go and fight basically the Fire Nation. And at that time, they suddenly get visited by a man that Katara and Sokka are both very familiar with, named Bato. So Bato, he's essentially a friend of Hakoda's, who in that said fight against the Fire Nation, he was quite badly injured, and because of that, the Hakoda and his team decided to leave him behind at a abbey for him to recover before he can join back the main group, Hakoda and his group. So Bato, he brings them to the abbey, and he introduced them to the nuns who are there essentially, and also the fact that the nuns there, they produce this sort of perfumes, and it's basically like a huge homecoming sort of feeling for Katara and for Sokka, because they've been away from the Water Tribe for so long, and this is essentially the first time they're meeting someone else from the Water Tribe, and this is someone who's very close to their father and had just recently seen their father as well. And they start reminiscing about the past, sharing stories and so on, and he sort of starts feeling quite left out at this point, because there's a lot of like inside jokes and a lot of stories that he's not familiar with, that and the group, they just seem very happy together without him being part of the discussion. um, Back towards our other characters, Iroh and Zuko. Iroh and Zuko, they both found that they actually had a stowaway on their ship, surprisingly. And this was thanks to a bounty hunter named June. So, June, she has this creature called a Shershu, and the name of this creature is Nyla. So, what Nyla is essentially it's a beast that can see and track smells. It can literally see smells, and like it'll be like different colors. And its special ability also is it's able to paralyze things, paralyze people and stuff with its tongue. So both Zuko and Iroh, they decide to enlist June and Nyla's help in order to capture the Avatar. So if you remember, Zuko, he actually has the necklace that Katara had lost in one of the previous episodes, and he uses this to give a scent for Nyla to track. And so they start traveling along the group's trail, and they go back to a few of the places that we had seen in the previous episodes, mainly being the herbalist, where Aang had got the information about the frogs to help heal his friends, and also Aunt Wu's fortune, the town that she was in, that she stayed in. So we get to see a bit of a throwback there as well. Back to Bato and Sokka and Katara. So Bato informs them that he's actually expecting a message from their father soon, and this is to get a information as to where Hakoda, their father, and the rest of the Water Tribe members are rendezvousing at this point. And Aang, after hearing this, he decides he wanted to leave the conversation, but he actually missed the part where both Katara and Sokka, they essentially said that even though they would love to meet their father right now, especially since it's been many years since they last saw him, their main focus is they want to bring Aang to the North Pole in order for him to learn waterbending. So Aang, unfortunately, he missed this part because he decided to leave. And he was hanging around the boat area again, where a messenger arrives and actually passes a map to Aang. And this map is actually the details as to where to meet Hakoda and the rest. And Aang, feeling that he's already been left out and so on, he decides that he wants to hide this information from both Katara and Sokka. So Bato, he decides to take Sokka ice dodging. This is basically a rite of passage for Water Tribe members in order for them to. It is basically for for especially for a warrior, for a boy to become a man, they have to go through this rite of passage called ice dodging, where of course if they're in the South Pole, they have to steer their ship through icebergs and so on. But because they are in the Earth Kingdom now, they essentially have to steer their ship through treacherous rocks and basically to make sure that Sokka, he's able to lead the team properly. So and of course Sokka, being the leader that we have seen him be over the past few episodes, he does this successfully. And while the team are being congratulated by Bato, Aang, he feels really guilty by the fact that he had hid the map from them, and he reveals to them that he has the map. Sokka and Katara get really angry, and especially Katara got very disappointed that Aang had hidden this information from them. And they basically tell Aang that, you know what, you can go to the North Pole on your own. We want to go meet up with our dad. And they basically go their separate ways. But at that Aang, he basically starts leaving on Appa, and Bato, Sokka and Katara, they decide to start walking off following the map's direction. But Sokka, basically he comes to the realization that, you know what, no, we can't leave Aang alone. He needs us as much as we need him. And they decide to turn back to go back to Aang. So they turn back to go back to the Abbey, while Bato he continues on his way to the rendezvous point. On their way back to the Abbey, Zuko, June, and Iroh actually attack Sokka and Katara, and this is because of the fact that they are using the scent of Katara's necklace, and it points them to Katara instead of Aang. So they get attacked at the Abbey, and Aang, finding out that this had happened, he actually comes back to the Abbey to help fight off Zuko and the rest. So Aang faces off against Zuko, while Appa, he actually fights against June and Nyla. And you know what? This is actually the first time in this entire show we've actually seen Appa fighting, which was actually quite cool to watch. The Abbey slowly starts getting destroyed by the fact that there's firebenders and there's huge creatures fighting each other. And while Appa is actually fighting Nyla, the other creature, Appa slowly starts getting paralyzed, but Sokka, he gets the idea. They are surrounded by perfume, huge bowls of perfume, so they want to trick Nyla by pouring out all of this perfume everywhere. And this works. Nyla gets tricked by all of the different perfumes, and it starts going crazy and just starts attacking randomly. And his tongue, the paralyzing tongue, hits and paralyzes both Zuko and June. And the group, they manage to escape. They reconcile as well. They, say their sorries and so on. And Aang, he gives Katara back her necklace. And yeah, basically it's like happy from then on. Right. So yes, that's basically the review of all 5 episodes for this particular season. For this particular podcast.
Mm-hmm.
So let's move on to the next section, which is basically characters. So I'll let Jax start us off here. Anything in particular you like to talk about for the characters, the character arcs mainly for these 5 episodes, or any new characters that you found interesting?
Yeah, so these 5 episodes, so I mean, obviously before the stream started, I did mention to you that these 5 episodes kind of they slipped me a little bit. They kind of escaped me a little bit. I didn't feel such a instant connection with them as I did with some of the previous episodes.
Yep.
I don't think that's a pattern that's going to continue. But that's not to say that I didn't enjoy myself. I did enjoy myself watching them. I found that there was definitely certain things that I enjoyed. And I think the character arcs are definitely something that we get to see, a little bit more, I guess, almost prominently, in these 5 episodes.
Yeah,
so,
especially for a few side characters,
like
a few
Aang,
side characters,
you know what I mean?
before this.
Yeah, exactly. We're sort of fleshing them out a little bit.
Yeah.
So I think, to sort of start us off with Aang, right? With Aang, I would say that obviously the episode The Storm, which is episode 12, is probably the biggest one for him thus far.
Yep.
Because
agreed.
we actually find out what happened and why, right? What happened to Aang? Why did he disappear, and how did he disappear? Because up until now we've kind of gotten like fractured bits here and there. We heard about Mang Gyatso. We know that he was friends with Aang. We know that he left. We know he fell into the water and he got into the thing, but we don't really know why those things are connected. Whereas this time now, finally, we get the story.
Yeah.
Right? And of course, this happens at the same time we get a story about Zuko, but we'll talk about Zuko's character later. As far as Aang's story goes, I think, that backstory was really good. I think that backstory was really good, even though it seems kind of, maybe because I'm an adult now, it seems kind of ridiculous that, it's like, oh, I'm getting separated from Mang Gyatso. It wasn't so much that, I don't think Mang Gyatso had to leave or anything. I think it was just like, the two of them just couldn't really spend as much time together. But it's not like they were kicking Mang Gyatso off of the Southern Temple.
No, they were basically sending Aang off to the Southern Air Temple. Oh no, sorry, to the Eastern Air Temple for training. So they were sort of like separating them.
Okay.
Yeah, they were separating them. And of course, Aang, he viewed Gyatso as like a father figure.
Right, yeah, exactly. It was the only person that he had. Um, so yeah, I mean, but even by that extent, the other things that were upsetting Aang, right? Like, his the kids that, first of all, he wasn't even best friends with them. It was just kids that he used to play with. The kids that he used to play with, who are just like, oh, you're the Avatar now. You're stronger than us. I get the alienation bit,
Yeah.
right? Okay, but first of all, can I just say, any other kid, any other kid would not react like that. All right, I know if I was a kid and I walked out there and a bunch of kids just told me I couldn't play because I was too strong, I would just be like, huh, yeah, you guys probably lose anyway. All right, I guess I'm headed home then. Too cool for school, you know what I mean? Aang was just like, oh, nobody want to play with me. Again, I'm an adult now, so it seems a bit ridiculous to me. But it's interesting because, again, he was a kid. He was so young. He was so young when this huge responsibility was thrust upon him, and he just didn't know what to do with it. And it wasn't like previous avatars who the previous avatars, as far as we've seen, they didn't necessarily face world-ending decisions, right? I mean, some of them did. Some of them had big opponents and big things to face, but they probably got way more time than Aang to actually train and prepare, which is why the Avatar was always a very revered and strong bender, right?
Yeah,
Aang
they were
was
actually they were
very
informed.
fully mastered airbender.
They were informed about their what do you call, like, the fact that they were the Avatar when they were 16 years old. Like, that was the was the normal tradition. But in this case, it's what the monks, the monks at the temple said. Because of the situation that they're in, they can foresee something is about to happen. They decide to inform Aang about this when he's just 12. He's still a kid. He is literally still a kid. Yeah.
He's still a kid, and he's not ready to accept the idea that there's a huge responsibility. I mean, exactly what I was mentioning earlier. You can see it in the way that he just wants to play. He just wants to play with his friends. He just wants to hang out with Gyatso. He doesn't want to think about the fact that the world is depending on him or anything like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, my point is, I think that backstory was really good. I think that was a good setup. I think it answers a lot of questions. I think for people who've been watching the show thus far, it answers a lot of questions. I like that. As far as the other episodes go for Aang, the first episode, let me just say, I can understand why people felt it was really inconsequential and therefore the worst episode ever. Now, I wouldn't say it was it's hard to say it's the worst episode ever because that makes it seem like it was bad, but it wasn't bad. It was bad in the sense that it didn't do anything. I think it tried to do things like the whole like Aang kind of being a leader and knowing how to settle things, which I guess they tried to do it, but inconsequential. I don't think it's quite possibly a better word for it. It's really what it felt like. It's like two families in a canyon. These three just happen to be there. Aang tries to mediate between them. Katara and Sokka. By the way, Katara and Sokka don't even stop fighting until after they get out, and they thought that the whole story of the Sacred Orb thing was fake.
Yeah.
And so they were like, "Oh man, well, I guess Sokka, you and I, I guess we can get along." And then after that, it turns out that Aang just lied about the whole story, just made it up.
Yeah.
And they're like, "Ha ha ha ha! All right, back on our merry journey." So it's like nothing happened. Nobody grew, right? Nobody had a big flaw. It wasn't anything, you know what I mean? So, the first episode was a bit of a write-off in terms of character development, I would definitely say. As for the others, Blue Spirit, interesting turning point, interesting. It's not new, I would say, about Aang's character. But to see him going back, it was an interesting twist to see him go back for Zuko after finding out that the Blue Spirit is actually Zuko, right?
Yeah.
Going back for Zuko to save him and to nurture him, kind of take care of him and stay with him throughout the night. That moment where he's just reminiscing next to Zuko and he's just talking about his friend Kuzon, right? And he's just saying like, do you think we could have been friends? It just speaks a lot to, well, firstly his kindness, right? Just how kind he is in his heart. He just can't bear to let Zuko go, even though Zuko's the guy who's been trying to basically capture him this entire time and send him to his enemy.
Yeah.
He can't bear to leave him there because that's just not who he is. You know what I mean? Zuko helped him, so it's only fair that he should help Zuko, no matter what, right? That speaks a lot to his character. It was also just kind of sad to see him reminisce about Kuzon, his Fire Nation friend, because I feel like that speaks to how much like, you know, he's just kind of tired. He hasn't even done anything that big yet, but he's just kind of tired of thinking about all this war and unhappiness. And you know, he reminisces the time when he's mentioned it before. He had friends in every single nation, so it's just like, you know, when can I go back to that? When can I go back to just being friends with people? Why do I gotta fight people all the time? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Why do I have to keep running away? I thought that was interesting. What do you think about it?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you basically covered what I wanted to mention as well. He had mainly the episode with the storm, and I would say the Blue Spirit episode. Those were the two major episodes that had, you know, impact to his character growth. And yeah, I mean, yeah, whatever I said, you've basically already said it earlier. Whatever I wanted to say, you said it earlier. I think the only interesting thing that, I guess, to put into perspective, he heard back to the episode in the storm, he heard that, you know, he's going to be split up from Monk Gyatso, and he decides to run away on Nappa, and they get stuck in a storm. He goes into the Avatar state in order to save himself, and Appa gets stuck, of course, by accident for 100 years. And he wakes up. First thing he sees is a Water Tribe girl, and he asks, "Hey, you want to go penguin sledding with me?" If you put that into like context, he was in that sort of anguish and turmoil, and he runs away. And then, you know, he just forgets what had happened. He doesn't know that he was stuck for 100 years. And the first thing he wakes up and sees is like, "Hey, you want to go penguin sledding?" I think that just sort of put into perspective his character, how he is, the fact that it sort of reiterates again that this is a kid, and we got to get used to, we got to realize that, you know, this is actually just a kid. He wants to have fun. He wants to be a kid, essentially. But of course, because of the situation that he's been put in and the responsibility, he can't be that, you know, fun-loving kid that he wants to be. I thought that was quite interesting to like sort of think back and realize that, oh, okay, yeah, this is literally what happens. He gets trapped and he wakes up, and, you know, he's just there with Katara and Sokka, and like, you know, just like fooling around with them basically in the Water Tribe.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was quite interesting to put into perspective. I guess, yeah, basically for Aang, that would be it. Next on the list would be Katara.
Actually, sorry, just
yeah, go ahead.
Sorry to jump in here. Just for 1 second, I do have a question though, and it was just something I was thinking about. It popped into my head when I was watching the episode, The Storm, because just yesterday I was watching Captain America: The First Avenger, right?
Okay.
And I know this sounds like a huge deviation. For Captain America: The First Avenger, you know how the movie starts, right? They find the ship in ice, and they find Captain America's body inside the plane, right? And I just couldn't help but think to myself, okay, these people just lost, like, the Avatar, right? The Avatar, they lost the Avatar. You think that in 112 years, maybe somebody would have gone to, like, look for him? I don't know. That would be my first instinct, is to go look for him. Because, I mean, I know it's like, okay, fine, whatever. It's like ancient times. You kind of just Google where he is, right? Or put a GPS tracker on Appa's like tail or something like that. I get that. But, like, I mean, you know, in these episodes, they've got shoes, which apparently can smell from literally any distance, right? Apparently. You've got airbenders, right, who could do air scooters across the water. I mean, I feel like
I think you're forgetting about the fact
in 112 years.
No, I think you're forgetting about the fact that I would say that almost immediately after Aang had run away, the Fire Nation attacked. You know, the whole thing about the show, the meme, everything was, you know, everything changed when the Fire Nation attacked, and literally everything did change. The world went into war. So I guess this focus sort of, probably there were people who were trying to search, but of course the focus was to save themselves. They know that the Fire Nation went on the onslaught, literally using Sozin's comet, which probably came around the time when Aang went into the ice. So they had to defend. They had to go on, basically they had to go on the defensive. They couldn't really, you know, go out and search for the Avatar. And people, I would assume, especially at that point, considering that Aang had only just found out that he was the Avatar, I would assume that people in the other nations would not have known which Airbender was the Avatar, and they would have heard about the genocide, the genocide of the Airbenders. Essentially, you know, they literally got wiped out. And yeah, they probably thought that the avatar was gone as well. And that is why, like, I think even in episode 1 it sort of like mentioned, I don't know whether it was Katara or one of the water tribe people just mentioned that, oh wow, the avatar is a real thing, so like that means in the period of 100 years people basically forgot that the avatar was the actual thing. They thought it was like a myth. So,
Right.
and it could be also because of financial propaganda for all. They want people to forget about the avatar because the avatar is the only thing that can stop them. So I would
Right.
assume that would have been the case as to why nobody found him. Yeah.
All right, fair enough. Point to
But
ATLA, I guess.
yeah, I guess, yeah, but you did bring up a point. But yeah, I think that would have been the reason. Of course, if anybody in chat would like to contribute as well, please feel free.
Mhm.
All right, I guess I'll move on to the next character as well. So Katara.
Yes.
To be honest, I don't really have much to say about Katara or even her character arc for these 5 episodes because it didn't really happen. She was a support character as usual, helping Aang and so on. But the most interaction that I think she had with anyone was Aunt Wu in the span of these 5 episodes. The fact that she always went back to her to get some silly fortune
Right.
reading and so on, and yeah, it didn't really have much of an impact, I would say. I guess the only thing that both, even for Sokka, I guess I'm sort of jumping ahead, but of course you can mention jump in as well at any time. Sokka as well throughout the 5 episodes, not really much character building compared to the previous 5 episodes. I'd say that one particular moment that was like sort of like a hint of Sokka's character is the fact that when he agreed to go with the fisherman to help him fish, and the storm was coming, and Katara was like, you know what, Sokka, we can just leave. But then Sokka was like, no, I already gave him my word, so I'm gonna do my job because I told him I'll help him, that kind of thing. So that sort of builds Sokka's character in the sense that he's the kind of person that if he promises you something, he's gonna do it, that kind of thing. But yeah, other than that, we don't really see much other character building. I mean, in the Blue Spirit episode, he was knocked out. Both he and Katara were knocked out and just like talking about funky stuff. And Fortune Teller episode, I mean, he was basically being the usual guy that he is, where he's not into like all this sort of fortune telling kind of thing. He's more of a man of science and logic and reason, which is what we have seen in prior episodes as well. I guess for both Katara and Sokka, the most proud moment for them essentially would be when they heard that they have a chance to meet their father, when Bato mentioned to them about the messenger. And of course it seemed initially like they were going to do that, but of course they came to the decision that, you know what, no, we have our own task, our own mission, which is to get Aang to the North Pole, and that is what we have to focus on. So I guess that sort of had a character building moment, a slight character building moment in the sense that they have a mission and they intend to keep to that mission. So I guess that would have been my only input for Katara and Sokka. Anything you like to add on, or you can move on to the next character?
No, in particular, I agree with your point that for Katara and Sokka, not a lot of building of their characters. Only thing I have to add is, not gonna lie, I found Katara a little annoying at times.
Sorry, you thought Katara was
especially
annoying?
when yeah, I thought Katara was annoying at times, especially when
The fortune teller.
she was going after Aunt Wu. Yeah, the fortune teller that whole thing, and then when she was what was the other one? The other one was when she was defending him from the fisherman, right? Because
Right.
I felt like that's not something Aang's been hiding. He did run away from home. You could tell that, right?
Yeah.
And the fisherman's just like, you turned your back on the world, and we had a big war. And the fisherman wasn't wrong. Clearly, Aang could tell that he wasn't wrong. Aang wasn't fighting back either, and she's just there like, hey, don't shout at him. He's a brave guy. You don't know what you're talking about. That's Aang, my friend, and he's a brave guy. And I was like, oh my god, shut it. Like, I cannot stand this. But yeah, besides that, yeah, nothing much to say for Katara. Sokka, I like. I would add on top of that not just the scene where he what is this kind of decided to go with the fisherman. Also the scene where he and Katara eventually decide to go back for Aang and help him.
Yep.
When they were when they were with Bato. I thought that was nice. That little flashback where he just kind of remembered what it felt like to be left alone.
Yeah.
By his father and left behind. I thought that was a nice connection that they made. It was a good building of his character. It really makes you like him a lot. I like that because the jokes can probably become weary at some point, but you still root for him because he's a likable person. He's a good guy, and I think the way that they bolster that with these small scenes, that's really good. And I like that.
All right, cool.
Should we move on to Zuko?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I mean, Zuko, what can I say? You gotta love the guy. All right? You might hate him, but you gotta love him as well. You know what I mean? Like, not love him in a great way, not right now at least. But you gotta love him because the duality of his nature is so telling, and I think it's that episode today, but the storm where they go into his backstory. Again, it comes to the back of the episode. That episode I think has to be the highlight for me.
Yeah.
That backstory that we see of Zuko, and you start to see how he got to where he is today. And it's a painful story. It's a painful story of basically betrayal within his own family. He just wanted to be a good son. That's the only wrong he ever did. Was he wanted to be a good son, and he just happened to embarrass his dad in front of like the generals, which I understand like teaching your son respect, and that could have been done with just a simple disciplinary words. You know what I mean? Like, hey, be more polite when you speak to the older general.
This is the Fire Nation
you know
we're talking
I mean?
about. The Fire Lord.
And so, I know exactly. It's the Fire Nation we're talking about. I understand that, but that's what I'm saying. Is like it's painful to watch because he just wanted to be a good son, and that time is actually the first time we kind of see him smile naturally and so happily at Uncle Iroh when Iroh says that
Mm-hmm. This is the first time that we've actually seen Zuko, a young Zuko, without the scar. This was actually the scene when he was talking against the other generals. And I mean, you brought up the valid point regarding the fact that he wanted to be a good son. I think he actually just wanted to be a good person in general because he completely disagreed with the idea that the generals brought up regarding sending in the fresh meat, these untrained soldiers to go up against these, well-trained veteran earthbenders and so on to like soften them up kind of thing. And that sort of like immediately gives you that perception that Zuko, he actually does care. He doesn't show it. His face is always angry. He's always looking very sullen and, but he's actually a nice guy deep down inside. And he cares about people. He cares about other people. And he doesn't want to sacrifice people who, don't need to be sacrificed. He doesn't want to waste the lives of all these soldiers, So yeah,
exactly.
Sorry, I just
and
cut
I
you
think
through
it's
that.
an easy. No, that's all right. I think it's an easy jump to make to say that, can you call him a good person because he was a part of the Fire Nation and he was trying to take over the world? It's like, yeah, sure, but, his intention, he wasn't born with the intentions of taking over the world. He was just born as the son of, the Fire Lord. And the Fire Lord is an evil guy who wants to take over the world. And, again, like I said, his only crime is he just wants to be a good son. He wants to be a good person. He wants to be a loyal son. He says it himself, I'll be loyal to you and everything, He was begging his dad for forgiveness, and his, Fire Lord Ozai basically didn't give it to him, and instead chose to burn him as, a punishment to teach him a lesson. Which, by the way, like, major overkill. Slap on the wrist, man. Or, I don't know, burn him literally anywhere else. I don't burn his hair or something, you know what I mean? Why directly on his eye? That shit is, it's insane to me. But yeah, I like that. I like that episode. Also, the one obviously within that same episode afterwards, we sort of see that other side of him coming out again when he chooses to, keep the safety of his crew instead of chasing Aang and team. Despite that literally being what his honor hangs upon. Well, hangs upon, even though it quite literally shouldn't matter. Um, and so yeah, I thought that was interesting. Besides that, with the other episodes, I don't think there was much for him, if I'm not mistaken. It was mainly just that episode. You get to see it. Of course, I think now they're kind of setting into motion his story a bit more. We're getting more and more of him each episode.
Yeah.
So I think we'll definitely be able to see more of a fleshing out of his character later on. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, definitely the Storm episode, we got a huge amount of backstory behind Zuko. We sort of had a glimpse of this, I think, in one of the prior episodes, but now we actually get the full story from Iroh himself, detailing to us like what actually made Zuko become the person that he is now. And you gotta just sympathize with the guy, man. He's just looking out for people. He's just looking out for people, just in general. And he basically, because of the fact that he was banished by the Fire Lord himself, a lot of the Fire Nation just treat him like trash. And even his own his own team as well, his own crew were like, questioning him about his decisions and so on. And Iroh manages to like reason with them and explain to them, okay, this is why he's actually like this. And I think it's also a interesting thing to point out the fact that I think the lieutenant, the lieutenant and his crew actually mentioned that, I thought he got the scar from a training accident. So meaning that it's not a well-known fact that the prince of the Fire Nation was scarred by his own father. So I thought that was something interesting as well. And
even though there was a huge audience at the Agni Kai.
Yeah, and yeah, I mean, Iroh was there, Zhao was there. I'm pretty sure Zhao was in the frame as well. So that's why Zhao knows about how.
Zhao was in the frame. Yeah.
Yeah. So Zhao knows about how what happened between Zuko and his father and what Zuko's status is basically now in the Fire Nation and so on. So yeah, I guess that episode really helped in building his character, and also, of course, the Blue Spirit episode. I think that really built up his character in the sense that we not only get to see him as someone. I mean, I would say that he saved Aang, of course, which is a great thing. Of course, it's really good from Zhao. But of course, it was being done for selfish reasons because he doesn't want Zhao to hate him. He wanted Aang for himself, essentially, But I think one thing that really stood out for me was the fact that even though he's such a powerful firebender, he's great in martial arts. Like, he didn't have to use firebending once, and of course, he couldn't use it because it was another persona, But he was using those double swords and, just hand-to-hand combat. It was just incredible to watch. And I think that really builds even further his character. During the course of these episodes. So yeah, I found that to be great. And since we mentioned about Zhao already, I guess we did see Zhao a couple of times, but I mean, yeah, it's basically just building on further to the fact that this guy's an asshole. So
yeah,
I don't think there's anything else to add on.
Like, he's a dick and we hate him.
Yeah, basically, we are sort of coming towards the last 5 episodes anyway, and it's sort of already narrowing it down. We know that Zuko, he is bad, but he has good in him, whereas Zhao is just bad for the sake of being bad. So yeah, I guess that's really building up Zhao to be the main villain, I guess, for at least for this season, from what we can see thus far. And I guess for Iroh, even for me, not really much character development in the sense for Iroh compared to what we had previously in the previous 5 episodes, when we learned he was a Dragon of the West, when he almost conquered Ba Sing Se and so on. Not much in these 5 episodes. I guess more of the fact that how much he cares for Zuko, and that he was there with him since he was banished and so on. And yeah, there's really nothing else much for me to add. If you have anything, feel free to go ahead, or we can go on to our likes and dislikes.
Yeah, so I think we'll move on to our likes and dislikes. The only thing I had to say for that last segment there. Oh, actually, no, I do have one more thing to add for the character segment.
Go ahead.
Very important. How could I have forgotten this? Okay, so the important thing I'll say in a second. I just wanted to add on about Iroh since you mentioned him. So Iroh, yeah, not much of him. Of course, Iroh for me, always best supporting actor. Oh, anytime, anywhere, any. I already said anywhere. I was about to say any place. I'm gonna avoid any more English mistakes. Anyway, so Iroh, I love him. There's nothing much to say, but you're
Yeah.
right. He didn't do very much these episodes. Just kind of here and there, little humorous quip. I would say that I actually prefer Iroh's sense of humor more than I do Sokka's sense of humor. Even though Sokka has some gems every now and then, I find myself enjoying Iroh's humor a lot more. So I like that they keep him around, sort of here and there. I think also that redirecting of lightning thing speaks to
Oh,
his
true. Yeah.
strength. And
There was
earlier
something
we
cool.
keep hearing like legends about him, right? Like, oh, he's Dragon of the West. Yeah, exactly. And it's like suddenly he redirects lightning. You're like, oh, you can do that? Like, oh, okay. Like, damn, dude. You know what I mean? Why aren't more of you doing this? Which is of course something that we'll see later on in the show. But yeah, that's about it for Iroh. However, we need to talk about Jinju.
All right, hold on. Okay, there you go.
I don't think we've done Jinju justice at all.
This was what, like a 3-second
Bring
scene?
up that photo. Let me see his face. This was a 3-second scene. Okay, but this man, he was done dirty. Okay. This boy was done absolutely dirty. Look at him. Okay. What is the cloud around him? Is he stinky? What's going on? Why is it? Who's Jinju? Why is he the only guy who's just standing there and everyone's like, who wants Jinju? It's just this one.
He's like the
poor,
last kid,
boy,
the last kid that you pick for like your dodgeball team.
Exactly. He's just sitting there and he's in a cloud. What's that cloud? Is he stinky? Is he dusty? Is he dirty? Is that a stain on his jacket? Why is there just this one? And that's the thing. It's like all the other monks are always shown to be this like very clean, like pristine monks who are like, perfect. You know what I mean? And then this Jinju. Oh, it's his name as well. His name's Jinju. He sounds like someone who's picked last for everything. Who's that? Oh, it's Jinju. Jinju. Oh no. Yeah, I just wanted to put him up here to give him a platform. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The shout
I have nothing else to add on for him because I have no idea what the point of that scene was. It was literally like a 3-second scene. And like, hey, Jinju, like, okay, let's move on. For all you know, I mean, the fact that he was mentioned, so, who knows, he might just show up. Maybe he was surviving Airbender.
If I ever like can't have, if I ever can't have like my camera on, what I want instead is just a photo of Jinju, just a zoom in of his face. Just replace me with Jinju.
I'm pretty sure he did that sound.
Some respect. Okay?
He was like, like that. I got to see. I got to rewatch it.
Dirty in this episode.
Oh, but actually,
yeah, I want to go back. I want to see Jinju again.
It sort of remind me as well. I think in the what episode? The fortune teller episode, when like Sokka was going around with Aang and like telling people, you shouldn't believe Anwu, and there was this one dude who was like really dirty, and Sokka was like, no, you just because Anwu said you shouldn't have a bath, that doesn't mean you can just walk around stinking. It sort of reminded me of Jinju at that point.
Don't be stinky, and he's like, what? And he's like, what's your name? It's my name's Jonju. Have you met my grandson? His name's Jinju. Or maybe it's actually
the other way
Jinju
around.
Again. It's like 112 years. I just realized, no, it's probably just Jinju, but like grown up. It's 112 years later, and he's still dirty and stinky. And there's still people like ragging on him for it. Why aren't you taking a shower? And he's like, oh, come on, guys. I only escaped from the Fire Nation because they didn't think I was an Airbender because I was so stinky.
I love to put this up in like the Avatar: The Last Airbender subreddit or something to like try and make the connection between Jinju and this guy. It's like, you guys, you just found something.
Yeah,
found out
there has to be a link between Jinju and Dirty Man from Anwu's village. There's gotta be. But yes.
All right.
Anyway.
We can move on.
Let's move on. Let's go on to the next section, our likes and dislikes.
Yeah. You can go ahead
so
first.
I think, shall I start us off?
Yep.
All right, cool. This lag between us is beautiful.
I know.
I don't know why. Honestly, at the start of this episode, it was fine. Like literally, like just when we started, there was this 10 seconds of heaven where you and I were saying things to each other and
It
replying
was
at a
all
normal pace.
synchronous, you know.
And
Yeah.
now there's like a 10-second lag between us. Yeah. Oh god. I have like sit here and like guess what you're gonna say, like just sit here and be like, yes, and then just wait for a second. Then you're just like, you say something. I'm like, oh, thank God. Okay, it fit. It fit. Okay, likes and dislikes. So, for me, like I said, these episodes slipped away from me a little bit. I didn't really connect with them too well as I did with the previous ones. If I had to pick out certain things that I liked, one of them would be the scene of the Yuyan archers chasing Aang in the field. So this is something I'll
Okay.
talk about a little bit later on, the cinematography and all that. But I liked it because I loved the way they directed that scene. I love the animation. I thought it was beautiful. Besides that, I think this is something that you had on your list as well. But given that you have more on your
Go
list,
ahead.
I'm going to
Yeah.
say it. Is the scene with the Sokka and the fisherman on the boat. And like the boat's like almost about to capsize, and Sokka goes, "I'm too young to die," and the old guy goes, "I'm not, but I still don't wanna." And that for me was hilarious. I love that so much. That interaction was so good, and yeah, for me it was mainly those two. I'll let you go ahead, and then when you say something I agree with, I'm just gonna go, ha ha ha, yeah, and I'm gonna agree with you. Go ahead.
All right, sure. Sure. I mean, yeah, and while I go through as well, you can feel free to just pop in with anything you'd like to add on. A couple of the stuff we actually talked about earlier, like for example, of course, Iroh redirecting lightning. That was something huge. That was something I really liked, something unexpected. But it was great to see that, see the fact that Iroh is that powerful. He can actually redirect, like control the flow of lightning. That's quite cool. But the other thing that I liked also is sort of like a minor thing, but more of like just regarding Aang, I guess his creativity essentially. I'd say the way that he dealt with the feuding tribes, I think he basically got tired of their shit. They're just like going at each other for like the whole Wenjin Genwei problem that happened many years back, sort of thing, and he just came up with the story to like make them deal with it and like end that whole
Yeah.
feud ongoing between them. So that was quite good in the sense that Aang, he is sort of picking up the fact that, I mean, being the Avatar, of course, he has to bring balance. He has to like bring peace to the world, kind of thing. So I thought that was quite okay. That was quite cool with him, and also the fact that he made up an entire move, a new move in airbending, which is the air scooter thing, the one that we saw, where
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately Jinju didn't get chosen in the team, but he made a new move of airbending, and actually seen him using this quite a bit, and even in the opening scene of the show as well. This is the move that he does, while he's like zooming around airbending. So I thought that was quite cool, the
Right.
fact that
Yeah.
he came up with a new move, for airbending itself.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, the biggest moment I would say would be back to the storm episode, and we see the reveals that happens for both Aang and Zuko's backstory. I would say it's sort of like a parallel, like the way that entire episode was framed was beautiful. It sort of like jumps
Yeah.
between Aang and between Zuko, between their flashback scenes and so on,
Yes.
and I thought it was very
Mm-hmm.
beautifully done. Yeah, and the fact that it all boils down to the theme of hope, and I would say hope is
Mm-hmm.
something that you will hear often in the show moving forward, especially, and more with a particular character later on. But yeah, essentially, like Aang, he is the hope of the entire world, and he's coming to terms with that fact. And for Zuko, Aang is his hope because he needs to capture the
Mm-hmm.
Avatar in order for him to be reinstated back as the prince, the rightful prince of the Fire Nation, and get back his honor and so on. And I think it all boils down to that particular hope theme. So yeah, I thought that was quite well done. It basically just goes back to the
Mm-hmm.
episode itself was very well done. Another thing that I like
Mm-hmm.
is the fact that this time we hear the Fire Lord speaking, but he's still in the he's still in the background, he's still in the shadows, and I
Right.
love
Yeah.
the fact that they're hiding this guy. We know that he's the big bad, like,
Mm-hmm.
there's Zuko, there's Zhao, there's other people, Fire Nation troops and so
Mm-hmm.
on, but this guy, he's the big bad, and we don't want to reveal him to you right now. It's only been 10 episodes in the first season, and I love the fact that the showrunners they did this for us. That he's so menacing. I think when Zuko spoke up against the generals, and when Ozai got angry, basically he's literally sitting in front of a wall of fire, and that wall of fire just rose up in the air, and I thought that was beautiful.
Yeah.
To represent, he is the king of fire essentially.
Right.
A couple of other things that I like was the in the Blue Spirit episode, Aang and Zuko's, or the Blue Spirit's escape scene from the fortress. That was a very cool scene. It just from the fact that we could see a mixture of both airbending and hand-to-hand combat happening at the same time between Aang and Zuko, and they're working together. They used whatever tools like they did. I think they used like that ladder thing to like jump from one end to the other end to the other end. That was really cool to watch. And yeah, I just loved the entire scene in general. Of course, the other scene was in the fortune teller episode. Two things there in particular. Right. I found it quite interesting. The fact that clouds are made of air and water, essentially water vapor. So it makes sense for an airbender and for a waterbender to be able to mold clouds into a particular shape. That was quite cool. And of course, the team fighting against a volcano. That was beautiful to watch, and I love that scene.
Amazing.
Yes, I'll probably talk about it more later on. Also, what I mentioned earlier regarding Appa, we actually managed to see Appa in combat for the first time when he's fighting against Nyla and June. And yeah, that's pretty much it. A few other like quips that I thought to just point out, I guess, from Aang's perspective. One of the things that he mentioned, this was in the Great Divide episode. At the start of the episode, he mentioned this to Katara and Sokka. Harsh words don't solve problems, actions will. And it helped diffuse that situation between Sokka and Katara. But when he said that again to the feuding tribes, they took it in the wrong way, where they actually decide to, action does work, and they like pull out their swords and start fighting each other. So I thought that was quite good in the play of words there. And I think I can't remember whether if this was in the episode that Sokka was hallucinating. It might be the Blue Spirit episode, or the episode before that, where I think Sokka woke up from a dream, and then he was like, I had a dream about us going and eating at a village, but food eats people. And it was just a simple one line, but I just found it to be really funny. And of course, the line that you mentioned earlier with Sokka, and this one line, I'm surprised you didn't mention this particular scene of Zuko. He was like, Uncle, I didn't see you getting hit with a tongue. And Iroh, shh. When he had June on top of him. And Iroh was like, it's fine, leave it. I just love that scene. The fact that Iroh, he's this old guy, but he has like this, this good looking girl, this woman who was like passed out on top of him, and is like, shh, leave it. that was quite funny to watch as well.
Yeah, that was a good scene.
Yeah. And yeah, that's pretty much what I have to talk about for the likes. Anything you'd like to add on, or you'd like to go into the dislike section?
Yeah, I think I'll jump into the dislike section. So obviously, usually we don't have anything to say. The only thing that kind of ticked me off just a little bit, you know what I mean? I understand why it is this way, but, I think having consumed a lot of other content, stuff like that, and, I guess the times are different now, the inability for the showrunners to show anything being killed really, really pains me sometimes. Like, when I think about shows, right, especially when I think about like anime and stuff like that, I think a really good example to bring to mind right now for me is One Punch Man, for example, right? So, One Punch Man, right? One of the biggest complaints that One Punch Man had in season 2, right, its second season, was that people felt that in the animation you couldn't feel the action. You know what I mean? Like sometimes they just chose to cut out certain scenes or to kind of gloss over certain fights in an action scene, and so people couldn't feel the action. And in season 1, they did that very well. You know what I mean? For anyone who doesn't know One Punch Man, it's about a guy who can defeat any opponent in one punch. And in the first season, every time you saw him punch, you could feel it. There was that impact. You know what I mean? Just like boom, he's hit somebody. Exactly. In this like show though, like every time I watch a fight, like I think A great example is the one where, you know, Aang and Zuko are fighting in the Abbey. That felt so lackluster to me. And the thing is, I don't blame the show, okay? Because again, it's a show for kids, right?
Yep.
You don't really show so much violence to kids. You don't want to show people dying. You know what I mean? But watching it now, like, you know, seeing these scenes, and I'm just like, in my head, every time I watch this, all I'm thinking about is, oh my god, if this show was recreated today for a more mature audience, these fight scenes would be so good, right? Seeing Aang and Zuko, that concept of air versus fire, and you know when they hit each other and there's that big explosion,
Oh
right?
yeah, yeah.
That was the only time I felt anything, because the rest of the fight, it's like Zuko throws a fireball and then Aang spins his staff and then you just see it go like and like dissipate.
Yeah,
And then
dissipates.
he throws a little air ball and Zuko goes and then it dissipates. You know what I mean? So it's just like this back and forth, and there's no like action feel. You know what I mean? I don't feel like I'm watching anything intense. It just feels like a spar between two friends. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I think this goes for a lot of things. Yeah, a lot of fights that we've seen so far. Not everyone, not every fight, but most of the fights that we've seen so far tend to have that kind of like what's I guess the best way to describe it is, you know, watching like two fighters who are like just out of reach. You know what I mean?
Right. Like that,
So you don't
that
really
fake
see it, they have to
sparring
just
kind
get
of
that-
thing.
well,
It's
well,
like
you know what I mean?
you
It's
don't
just
see
like-
the impact. It's
exactly.
like
you
you
know
see
what
the
I mean?
punch, but you don't actually see the punch impacting, you know, the person, that kind of thing.
Exactly. And God Almighty, I wanted those stupid canyon crawlers to die so badly. Do you know how easy it would have been for Aang to make a slice of air so thin it would kill that stupid canyon crawler? It would have been so easy for him to do it, but they just can't show him doing it. But oh my god, I wanted him so bad to just land like a wall of air and squish them, or just cut through them and just get rid of them. You know what I mean? I personally am not a big fan of insects, right?
All right.
So you know that obviously plays a role in this. But oh my god, it's just when I see scenes like that, right? And then he has to come up with the most ridiculous thing ever, right? These
He comes up with like a
huge
tornado
insects
or a
with
torpedo
giant,
kind of thing.
powerful jaws. Yeah. Instead, he decides to put bags around their mouths and just cinch them. And for some reason, they are no longer aggressive. They just kind of sit there, panting like a dog, while somebody slowly puts a bag over their mouth. That scene to me was ridiculous. I was just like, okay, I can excuse a lot of things, but that one's a little stupid. You know
Would
what
you
I
say
mean?
you had a great
Yeah,
divide?
I think I just
with
wanted
that
to see those
episode?
insects dead. Whew, and with that, that's another thing to add to my dislikes list is what you just said. Alright. And so, swiftly moving on, let's go into cinematics, because that's all I have to say about this.
All right, so going into cinematics right now. So I have a couple of points just to bring up. Feel free, Jax, to come in as well if you'd like to add on to anything, or you know, give your own opinion as well. So yeah, so cinematics, we're looking at first at cinematography. I think one main way the show presented the storyline, this was in the Great Divide episode, the story of the reason why the Genjin tribe and the Zhang tribe were fighting each other, were in a feud. And this was because, you know, they had this ancestors who basically fought against each other. And I thought the way that the story was presented, when it was being presented for the Genjin tribe, it was in this particular animation style where everything was very clean, very refined. It looked like a real, you know, like an anime basically. It looked very well animated kind of thing, very clean. Whereas when they were talking about the story from the Zhang's perspective, the Zhang tribe's perspective, that seemed more rough, more sketchy, more comic bookish kind of drawing, kind of animation, and I thought that was brilliant. You know, they were playing along the fact that the Genjin, they were very like prim and proper kind of people, whereas the Zhangs, they were like barbaric kind of people. So the way the story
It was like
presented,
a messy kind of animation.
yeah, exactly. So it fits like the storyteller in a sense. I thought it was just very well done. The fact that they decided to go with that kind of animation design. for those for that section. But the
Mm-hmm.
excuse me, the other thing itself, for the next episode, the storm episode, the visual for the storm itself, I don't know why, but to me both the scenes when Aang and Katara were trying to save Sokka and the other the old earthbending guy, and also the scene with Sokka. I want to say Zuko and Sokka. It ended up coming out as Sokka. So Zuko on his ship with Iroh and the rest of his firebenders. You know that scene where he saved one of his own men, and yeah, basically they're trying to get out of the storm. I thought it was very well animated, and I don't know. I guess it could have been a very messy scene, but I didn't feel that way at all. Considering there's like water, there's waves going around crazy everywhere. They're in the middle of the ocean kind of thing,
Mm-hmm.
and the storm itself was very well animated. The fact that they also did the animation for life in the air temple in the flashback scenes, I thought that was very well done.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it was just presented very well and very easy for the viewer to follow through. And of course, seeing Aang in the Avatar state again, that was quite cool. And the fact that instead of turning into a ball of ice, he manages to actually free them from the wave that took them down, and they are escaping away on Appa. That was quite cool to watch. But of course, I would say even better than the storm episode would be the visuals that we got from the fortune teller episode when the volcano exploded. I don't know why, but maybe it's just me. I'm just a big fan of volcanoes and lava in general. So when that entire scene when the volcano was like blowing up and the lava was flowing down, and the team, they were trying to like redirect the lava out, and of course the big scene where Aang, he manages to use his airbending to just like turn the lava into stone, essentially like cools off the lava and turns it into stone, and this sort of portrays how powerful of a bender he is, that being the main point of that scene for Katara mainly. But yeah, I just thought that was beautiful. And the fact that they show us after the fact how that village looks like, with like these claws of rock like surrounding the village, I thought that was like beautiful. That
Yes.
entire scene was really well done. And another like cinematic, I guess I would like to talk about also was the what I mentioned earlier also was the airbending plus hand-to-hand combat that we saw in the Blue Spirit episode. Like I said, it was a very well done scene, that escape scene, and it was well balanced between the airbending that Aang was doing and between the combat that Zuko was doing. It sort of flowed very well, even though these two people are meeting each other or like working together for the first time. But both of them just gelled very well together, and they knew what the other person was thinking, and yeah, they like almost managed to escape successfully, kind of thing. So yeah, I thought that was very beautifully done. Cinematics wise, it was very well handled. Um, the other thing I guess I'd like to point out, I guess the creatures that we've been introduced thus far. I of course we've seen Appa since the first episode, and I think we sort of get used to how Appa is. He's like a mix of a bison and a buffalo kind of thing, and it's quite cool.
And Momo as well.
And yeah, of course, Momo as well, a flying lemur, literally flying. And we also got introduced to Nyla in in the Bato from the Water Tribe episode, and I just found him to be a very interesting creature. The fact that I'm pretty sure it's blind, but not blind in the sense, but it can see smells, and I don't know, I just thought it was quite cool.
Yeah, it's supposed to be a.
And
Yeah, I think it's supposed to be a mole. It's a mix of a mole,
right?
and I don't know what else it's supposed to be. I guess like a dog, a mole and a dog. Does that make sense?
Maybe a mole and a bear. So. But they call it a Shershu.
No, but they already had the
platypus bear.
Platypus bear, right? The platypus bear was more like a bear.
Yeah.
This one was like, I don't know. It felt more dog to me. It had
I'm
like
kind of
dog's
surprised.
tail and everything.
Did it? Oh, okay, maybe it did. But I'm kind of surprised because like the way the show of course is doing this entire like hybrid of animals thing is of course like two animals mixed with each other. So we can see like even from the first episode itself, it was like a mix of penguin and catfish, because they had like the big whiskers and it looked kind of fishy kind of thing. So it's like that whole penguin thing is like a mixture of animals. Appa being a mixture of animals, the platypus bear literally being a platypus and a bear mixed together in one animal. But
Mm-hmm.
Nyla, they actually called it a Shershu, so I'm not sure what exactly the mixture of animal it is. But the fact that it can sense the smell, it can see the smell as soon as it's given a scent of an item, and it can track or trace this the scent for such a huge distance, because you could see them. They went to the what do you call it, the herbalist on the mountain. They went to the town with Anwuin, and these are quite vast distances that they travel. And the fact that this
Mm-hmm.
animal can actually track them all the way is like, why doesn't Zuko just like bring this along on his ship as well, kind of thing. And the fact that also that it can paralyze things with its tongue, I thought that was quite cool. I'm pretty sure there are animals like that exist in our world as well, but uh, the way that it actually just like paralyzes people in one hit, but Appa can take a few hits, I thought that was quite cool to see as well. That entire design was
Mm-hmm.
very well done. And just in general,
Right.
since we also do mention places in this section regarding the design, the Fire Nation fortress, I don't think the fortress was ever named, but this is basically the fortress that Zhao became, as soon as he became admiral, he took command of, and that's where Aang was trapped until he was saved by the Blue Spirit. Just the design of the fortress, how the fortress has its own defenses, and they had to like overcome these defenses in order to escape, kind of thing. Like it was just very interesting to see, and very interesting to see the design of how it's very industrialized. You could see parallels to it to the other Fire Nation places that we've seen before as well.
Right.
So yes, that's all I had to add on for cinematics. Anything you'd like to jump in with?
Yeah. So, I guess for me, I didn't have exactly very much to add. Obviously, for me, first thing, Avatar State. I'm always gonna like it. I'm always gonna like it. It's always gonna strike a chord with me. I just I love that whole concept. One thing that I wanted to add is actually the Avatar State this time. Something I just realized is that you know he actually exerts more control this time over the Avatar State. It feels like in
True.
previous
Yeah.
episodes, if he went into the Avatar State, he didn't have control. He was just kind of reflex reacting to something, and it's like the other spirits taking over. Whereas this time, it felt like he had more control over what he wanted to do.
Yep.
Um,
I agree. He
like the
briefly
first
went
time that
into
happened
state.
to him when he fell into the water and he, encased himself in ice. Yeah, he went into the Avatar state and he was trying to protect himself, but it wasn't a conscious thing. It was the Avatar spirit protecting itself, right, by encasing him in air and ice. Um, so yeah, that was interesting. Besides that, I wanted to add for me the volcano eruption. It wasn't so much the eruption itself or even Aang's handling of the volcano eruption, though very impressive, that struck with me. For me, the shot that really kind of sealed it was that side view shot of Katara and Sokka just kind of staring at Aang in disbelief as he's like blowing wind and stopping this giant wave of lava which is about to collapse on them,
Yeah.
and just watching it solidify in front of them, and just that kind of like shocked speech from Sokka when he just goes like, "Whoa," you know what I mean? This guy's. Sometimes you forget that this kid's, this kid's a powerful bender. It's easy to forget it because all the time he's running around. And he's like, "Hey, anybody want to go fucking penguin sledding with me?" You know what I mean? But he's a kid, right? And yet he's still able to do stuff like this. It's insane. And so, that for me was really the shot that sealed it. Gave me a little bit of goosebumps. Um, but yeah, I would say for cinematography, that's really the one thing that stuck with me for this string of episodes. Um,
All right.
so I think we should go on to give our ranking.
Sure. Yep. We will move on to our ranking. Okay. So, I think I'll start off first with my ranking,
Mm-hmm.
since I realize I tend to go a little bit into the reasoning behind my ranking. Um, but yeah, feel free to do the same as well when you want to go ahead as well. So, all right. So basically, to recap, how what we do essentially is we will award points to our top three favorite characters from these particular 5 episodes. So how it works is the least favorite would get 1 point. Second place would be 2 points, and first place, of course, our most favorite would get 3 points. And currently, I don't actually have this up now, but Sokka is in the lead thus far with 8 points. Iroh right behind him at 7 points. Aang with 5 points, and Katara at 4 points. So yeah, this is basically the ranking that we have from the previous 2 podcast episodes that we've done so far. So okay, I'll start off first with my third place position, basically, which will be 1 point, worth 1 point. So I'll be awarding this to Sokka. I'd say that this was probably, for me, I think usually I would put Sokka in my top 2, but in this case, like what we mentioned earlier, there wasn't really that much of a, the storyline wasn't really that much based on Sokka for these 5 episodes, other than the Battle of the Water Tribe episode, the latest 15th episode. But basically, yeah, because of that 15th episode is why I wanted to award Sokka this 1 point. The fact that he initially, when they heard about the fact that they could meet their father soon, from the messenger and stuff, and they wanted to, even though this was their opportunity to finally meet him after so many years, but he decided that, no, we have our own mission right now that we got to focus on, and I'm just really happy by the fact that he knows that this is his true path and he has to stick on with this, and that is why that he wants to make sure that he gets Aang to the Northern Water Tribe, because that is their mission that they've set out anyways. And he probably knows that his father wouldn't be happy if he learned that he abandoned the Avatar, and in order just to come and see him. And the decision that they made in the end to turn back and go back after Aang, kind of thing, that sort of solidified my intention of giving Sokka this 1 point. In next, second place, worth 2 points. This I'm actually going to award to Aang. So I'll admit this was quite tough for me between my second place and first place choice. Of course, my first place I'll mention later on, but I decided to give Aang the 2 points, mainly because of the fact that we managed to learn more about his backstory and the reason as to why he wanted to run away from the Air Temple. And we learn about his relationship. We learn more about his relationship with Mangyatso, his relationship with the other monks in the Air Temple, and how he basically the sort of situation he was put in when he and the other air nomads found out that he was the Avatar, and he sort of got separated from his friends, and that sort of like turmoil that he faced. Like I felt that was very well done, and we could connect easily to him and understand that this was the conflict that he had, and this was why he wanted to run away. And yeah, I would say that I'm mainly awarding these 2 points mainly because of that episode. Of course, he had plenty of other episodes where he also made quite a big impactful decisions, essentially, mainly being the Blue Spirit episode where he decides to go back and save Zuko, as a thanks for Zuko freeing him from the fortress. So I felt that really had a big impact to his character and really showed what type of person he actually is, what type of kid he actually is. And yeah, that's the reason why I decided to award him my 2 points. So for my first place, which is worth 3 points, I decided to give it to I think our new almost favorite boy, Zuko. Yeah, and like I said, it took me a while to decide on who was going to get the first and second place between Aang and Zuko, but I decided to actually give it to Zuko, mainly because of the fact that I felt that I understood his backstory a little bit more compared to Aang. Because Aang's backstory, we sort of understood it from the previous episodes. We already knew what he was going through and so on. But with Zuko, this is where we actually learned what actually happened to him. And it wasn't the fact that he was just being an ass or being a dick to other people that he got scarred and so on. He spoke out against another general in his father's meeting, and the reason he spoke out was because he wanted to save people, save his own soldiers who were being put into a treacherous situation by other generals. And it just speaks a lot to the fact that he is someone who is caring, who is like loving, and even though we don't see that part of him now, obviously because of the fact that his mindset has sort of changed at this point of time. But at one point, when however many years back that was, where he got scarred by his father, he wasn't this person that we see him as today. And yeah, I felt like that had more of an impact to me, and the fact that he went into the Agnikai confident that he was going to face off against the general that he spoke up to, but he was so shocked when he realized that he had to fight his own father that he just fell on his knees and started crying, and being the Fire Nation Prince, this was something huge to do in front of so many people. And it to me, it might have to other people, it might have been weakness that he was showing, but to me it's actually his strength, because he loves his father, he doesn't want to go against his father, and he just, like, not to say gave up, but he knew that if he fought against his father, it would just hurt him more instead. And of course, Ozai, being the big bad that he is, doesn't give a shit and scars his son for life, essentially, and we learned the story about him. That had a bigger impact to me, and that's why I felt that I got that connection more with Zuko compared to Aang's backstory. And yep, I decided to give him my 3 points. So over to you, Jax.
Yeah, well, right away you've already put me in doubt of my own ranking, and now I'm reconsidering everything. But
no, it's okay. You can stick to what you have.
Yeah. But yeah. Okay, so for me, Sokka. I gave Sokka my third place vote. The reason why, very similar to yours. There wasn't very much of him for me to go off of, but it was still more than the other characters on this list, I'm definitely not giving anything to Katara. She annoyed me in that episode. The whole Aunt Wu thing and the fisherman thing, that got to me. Katara's not getting any points. Right? She's getting -1 if she keeps pushing it. And so, at least Sokka kind of had a little bit of, that small scene, that flashback that we had with him and his dad, you know what I mean? The scenes of him being a good guy, it really makes me admire him a little bit more, you know what I mean, as a character. So that's why I've given him my third place vote. Now, for second place, so this one I actually gave to Zuko. But it was a tough one because I was pretty much in the same predicament as you were. I gave my second place to Zuko mainly because it wasn't that I felt like his story was any less than Aang's story. It was more just that I wish I had more. I wish I had more to go on. I like the story, I like the backstory, but I don't have enough yet to like his character more. You know what I mean? Which is why I gave my first place and 3 points to Aang, because his character is so much more fleshed out. Not that it's Zuko's fault in any way, but obviously it's just the way the show is being, sort of formatted and structured. So it's just the way things are. But there's more to go off of with Aang, and we're more attached to him, and so that backstory sort of gives us more to feel compared to Zuko's, in my opinion. So even though I do agree with you that Zuko's was more relatable and more, almost to a sense, I guess, more human and raw compared to Aang's, right? I would definitely say that Aang's gave me a lot more of a, I guess, an overall connection to his character.
Understandable.
Whereas with Zuko, it was just that I related to the story. That's it. I could empathize with the story, which is why I've given my 3 points to Aang, 2 points to Zuko, and 1 point to Mr. Sokka.
All right. Okay, cool. So right now I'll bring up the current ranking that we have. So we essentially have 5 characters that we've awarded points to thus far, in this 3 podcasts that we've had so far. So the points are up right now, and surprise, surprise, we have a tie for first place. Sokka and Aang tied at 10 points. Your boy Iroh, he's still there at 7 points. And a surprise entry now, Zuko, first time being awarded points in this episode, in this podcast, and he has immediately overtaken Katara. 5 points to Zuko and 4 to Katara. Yep.
It's
So
just paying for Katara. He's like, yo, I've been here way longer than this fool.
exactly, she's been here
It
since
just
episode one,
overtakes
but
me in like one episode. Oh
but
god.
yeah,
Yeah.
this is something interesting. I mean, I wasn't expecting Sokka and Aang to have a tie, so
Mm-hmm.
this is quite interesting battle going into the final round. Of course, we'll be having one more podcast for the final 5 episodes of book one, and
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I don't know them. It might end up in a tie. I don't know. It really depends. It really depends, I guess, on how Sokka's and Aang's character development happens. Over the course of the next 5 episodes, and of course, the next
Yeah.
5 episodes being the final 5 episodes for book one. There's definitely going to be a finale, basically a season finale for this
Mm-hmm.
first season. So of course, I'm expecting things to ramp up. A lot of stuff might happen, and yeah, we never
Mm-hmm.
know. Maybe more stuff might happen with Zuko, and Zuko could shoot up to 10 points. Who knows? you know,
Yeah, I don't even remember how this first book ends, so I
great,
wouldn't even know
great.
how to like sort of guess the ratings and to kind of guess where it's gonna go.
Yep.
Um, but you know what? You know what? I'm gonna make a bet.
Okay.
I'm gonna make a bet that by the end of this book one, we're not putting anything on the bet, by the way. I'm just making a bet that by the end of book one, Zuko is going to come in. Ooh, actually, there's only one more episode, right? There's a
It's
maximum of
only one more
three
episode of the
points. Okay,
podcast.
I
Yep.
think Zuko's gonna come in. Yeah, I think Zuko's gonna come in like third. I feel
Okay.
like Iroh is gonna come in second,
Okay.
right? And
Ooh, that's
yeah, you
interesting.
know what? I think Aang is gonna take it. I feel like it's gonna be Aang, Iroh, Zuko, Sokka, Katara. That's what I think.
Okay. Um, yeah, I'm not going to be betting. I, I, I really don't know what to expect because for me, yeah, I don't. Oops, the music just ran out. But yeah, the final few episodes, I remember vaguely of what happens in the finale, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't really remember the episodes that lead up to it. So basically going into it with like a set of fresh eyes, essentially. So yeah, that'll be interesting to
Yeah.
see what happens. We only have 5 more episodes left.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that is basically it for this podcast. So this is the end of the third podcast. We have one more final podcast coming up. Most likely two
Mm-hmm.
weeks. 2 weeks. Yeah, 2 weeks from now. So that will
Mm-hmm.
be the review of the final 5 episodes from episode 16 to episode 20 for book one of Avatar: The Last Airbender. And
Yes.
yes, that's of course, as usual, if there's anything that you would like to see any improvement in the setup of this podcast, any other topics that you think we should go through, or anything like to just give any feedback on, we really appreciate it. This is the first time that we are running a podcast, so somehow we've actually managed to make it 3 episodes in, and yeah, hopefully, after we are done with book one, if the response that we get is good, then we probably just continue as well with book two, hopefully, and so on after that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, any feedback is always appreciated. And as usual, I stream the podcast on Twitch. Usually every Sunday nights. You can of course follow me on Twitch to get any updates, or also join my Discord. My Discord is also in my Twitch chat, so feel free to click on the link to join my Discord to get updates for this podcast and also for any of my other streams. I usually stream on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday nights, and also on other weekday nights if I'm not busy with work. But yeah, that's basically it from me. Jax, any final messages or reminders?
Yeah, no, it's been great so far. We're finally here at the penultimate episode. I now know what that means.
Perfect.
So yeah, I think it's great. Been awesome to be doing this so far.
Happy
Glad
to hear that.
that we have people here who do join us on the streams. Very
Yes.
very appreciative of you guys. Um, but yeah, hoping to see you guys in the next episode, and let's see how the book one ends. Looking
Yep.
forward to it.
Yep, just to echo Jax further, really, really appreciate the fact that you guys are watching the stream on Twitch and also on YouTube as well, the VOD that goes up. So, yep, just a reminder, the next episode will be covering episode 16 to episode 20 of Book 1. So, do watch those 5 episodes before coming and tuning into the podcast. And that is going to be it from us today. Thank you so much again. We will see you around next time. Bye bye.